Okay, let's walk through this question. All right. Okay. Son started middle school. I'm going to paraphrase a lot of that. Just diagnosed with severe dyslexia in second grade by Scottish Rite. And then it's been an up here battle. But prior to the closing of the schools last year, he was finally making progress when the school closed. We were not allowed access to the Orton Gillingham program he was using, even though it could be made available online. So forth and so on. First issue is that the middle school still has not told me if they will supply a research-based program and what the program would be. First of all, it should be the same program that he was making progress with prior to the school closure. That's number one, but we'll get into that. The second issue is in regards to him having access to the same electives that other students have access to, which is a huge issue. So let's walk through that. Okay. Number one, when I see issues, especially learning disabilities, which then, of course, carry over to other disability categories because academics is such an important aspect of school, right? Now, this is where schools are wrong and off base and need a little bit of schooling themselves in understanding that the experience for children covers the gambit, okay? School is not just academics. We send children to school for a myriad of reasons, and we service kids under, as far as for IEPs, under three main educational performance areas. Okay, and when I say main areas, that would touch on the majority of students with IEPs. Okay, so the three main ones that are just sort of tried and true, and this is why we develop goals, and this is why we provide services, and that would be academics. Okay, that's a no-brainer. Schools love that. It's just academics, right? No, wrong. See, we also have communication as a second educational performance areas. And the third is social emotional development. That includes behavior. These are the three triumvirate things that the holy triumvirate that the majority of kids when it comes to their IEP program, and I could care less if the child is specific learning disabled. We look at all areas of educational performance need because children come to school with those needs anyway. And I don't care if they're neurotypical, they don't have an IEP. We serve, or at least we used to. We used to view school as our little petri dish, I guess you could say, or societal experimentation where we allow children to make mistakes in this therapeutic environment that we call school, so that we could teach them and train them to live within a civil society. Okay, so that's where we sit there and forgive what would typically be crimes for adults, like harassment is a crime. Children do it all the time. They're dysregulated. We sort of expect it. That's what adults are there for, to sit there and guide and use these mistakes as teachable moments. Now, unfortunately, because we've inserted zero tolerance and we've sort of lost that attitude over the years of these teachable moments. I'm not saying everywhere. There's still a lot of great administrators out there that still believe that their role is to be mentors and the righteous judge, so to speak, to borrow from a parable, that there needs to be examples of empathy, judiciousness, forgiveness, all of those things in order to properly prepare our children in concert and collaboration with the parents, of course. So those are our three educational performance areas. Now, I don't care that the school says, well, we're not a therapeutic setting. Well, you're not. Yes, you are, depending. I don't agree with that nonsense. We're not a therapeutic setting. No, you're a public education setting that is a wraparound of services of the highest interest of society, starting with your local community. And that is to teach the children to be law-abiding, um, ethical, moral, and hardworking human beings, to be able to, you know, push forward and have and live in a society that is peaceful and productive and healthy, all those things. And that's what the school's role is. So I disagree that it's solely academics, because that doesn't get you that far in life. Um, you know, there's that hidden curriculum that nobody wants to talk about. There's a whole book about that called The Hidden Curriculum. And that involves that communicative piece, that language, social communication, those exchanges, those social settings to where children negotiate with one another and have to learn to deal with people that they may disagree with or not understand or love or hate, whatever, the whole mixture, with with attentive adults there to help guide that experience. Okay, so that's that whole social emotional aspect. Now, depending on the needs of your child, it could go into things like functional skills, tying your shoe, wiping your behind. It goes down to that level, guys, depending on the needs of your child. And then when your child gets to be ninth grade, 14 years old, then we introduce that last piece of transition to where we have the remaining eligibility years up until 21 to work on transition skills, to fulfill the mission statement of the IDEA, which is economic viability, continuing education, and independent living. So you see how academics feed into that transition mission goal of the IDEA, so does social emotional learning, and so does communication. Feeds right into that. Very fluid. Smart. Okay, so with that being said, in your situation, number one, with the reading, they should have just continued with the Orton Gillingham program if it was available online. That was stupid that they didn't do it. I don't know why they didn't do it. It should have been made available. That was appropriate, and it was something that was accessible during the shutdown, which means that they denied him access to the very thing that he required in order to receive a FAPE. So you already have a legal challenge there. I know you're in Alabama. I don't know where in Alabama. I don't know what school did this to you, but shame on them. And if you're still having issues, in fact, they could have just continued access to that through the summer to really help him out. They didn't do that either, did they? And then now that school's starting, they still haven't done it. They still haven't named a program. They still haven't provided guidance in this area, and therefore they're still in violation. Quite frankly, if that was what was making gains, shame on them for not continuing it. So they shouldn't be naming anything other than what they were doing that you believe was working. They have a lot of explaining to do. Okay. Now, with regards to the electives, I run into that so frequently and so often. I believe that it's knocking on the door of being discriminatory, and the reason that denying your child the same kind of access to electives in the same way that every other student is, including your other child, I think it's discriminatory, because they're taking the disability and highlighting the disability as the impediment of limiting his options to electives, as though punishing him for having dyslexia, punishing him for having, or punishing another child for having autism. We just don't do that. So therefore, in that regard, a lot of the decisions being made by schools when it comes to your child has to take this class and this class, and they tend to double dose on reading and they double dose on math. And then they sit there and hide behind, well, the state's making us do that and we have requirements to meet. The child doesn't view it that way. The child views it as punishment. Also, the science tells us that there's only so much that you can sit there and shove into a kid's brain at particular ages, to where, you're not, there's no net gain from just continuing to pound reading and reading and reading and reading and math and math and math and math. It needs to be done targeted. It needs to be done right, and it needs to be done within those confines of science. The little children are no different than us. Okay, we just don't work that way. I have to give myself multiple breaks during the day, including looking at this that has access to all the world and social media and everything like that, in order to reset and be able to focus. So to sit there and cram an hour of reading, if there's no specific, concise purpose and other than some mindless, I've got to do it, we've got to do it, that's what they require us to do, it's nonsense. And like I said, it tends to be leaning heavily toward the administrative convenience of the school without any consideration of the child. And that's where I think there's a huge problem knocking on the door of discrimination, because the children with IEPs and with these issues are being discriminated against because they're not being given equal access to the full litany of elective options, and they're being limited because their schedule as a learning disabled child has been pre-made to sit there and lop on and lop on and lop on more services instead of targeting and individualizing those services. So in both realms, you've got some legitimate concerns and some legitimate arguments to make to your team and your school.